What we're going to do now is have a Q&A, which is going to be very interesting. I'm only here to say thanks for coming, and the reason I'm here is I'm just another angry parent fighting the eternal, exhausting and depressing battle with children who only want to be on a screen. And the final straw was when the schools started saying, with some smugness, we give every child a Chromebook, and they do a lot of lessons on their Chromebook, and they do all their homework on their Chromebook, and you just thought, that is the last fucking thing they need, and the last thing we need. So hence, trying to get together with Sophie to do all this. My big question, personally, is who do you lobby on this? Do you lobby the schools? And if you do, what's the weird, sudden, frozen, sepulchral silence from them on this issue? What's the nature of the deal they did with EdTech that makes them suddenly adopt a different tone when talking to a parent on this issue from their normal tone? Suddenly you get letters in this kind of semi-legalese, and you think, well, what is this? What happened with you and Google Classroom or whatever it might be? So do you go for the schools? Do you go to government? And my experience campaigning with Hacked Off over 12 years is that's probably a bad idea. I'm very cynical about it now. I don't think politicians ever do anything because it's the right thing to do, even if it's the right thing to do to protect children. They'll only do what gets them votes. They only care about their career. And therefore, I think the third option on this, which is to go after parents, is the right one, because I think that once you get a critical mass of parents who are outraged by EdTech, as well as all the other issues, the phones, etc., that is when politicians listen because they're scared of votes, and I also think it's when schools start to listen because they're scared of people leaving their schools and losing business. That's my personal theory. But there are people here who know a lot more about this than me. We're going to throw it open to the floor. Maybe just before we do that, we should talk to two of the greatest specialists in this area, one of whom is Emily Cherkin, who's disappeared. Where is she? Emily, where are you? There she is. She's come all the way from America. She's a teacher, a mother, a campaigner, an expert in this area. And have you got a mic, Emily?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Emily Cherkin. I am a former educator myself. I'm now the Screentime consultant, and Sophie lovely quoted my EdTech is BigTech, as we say, in a sweater vest in the US, not a school uniform, but same idea. I've been working with schools and families for the last several years, working on the EdTech issue and really trying to push back on EdTech prior even to COVID, which is, again, as you point out, was just part of the problem. And there are three things that I have noticed. One is that parents in schools are increasingly uncomfortable with how to manage screen time, not just at home, but also educational technology. And number two, and the thing I think that is not well understood yet, is that the business model of these educational technology companies is identical to the business model of big tech, Meta, Google, TikTok, Snap. It's the same. It's the attention economy. It is time on device equals dollars, and how to monetize that data for profit. And the data we're talking about is our children's. And so if the business model is also then fundamentally at odds with child development, that's concerning. I'm the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit against PowerSchool, which is a $5 billion company in the United States. And my colleague will speak shortly about that. And I just want to say, if these products are backed by by companies with the same business models as big tech, then why are we bringing them into school in the first place? So, thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I think that's going to go roaming round. Sophie, you wanted to introduce. Yeah.
Our next speaker is Julie. Julie, you're fighting the good fight in America on a mega scale. Please tell us about what you're doing.
Yes, thank you, and thank you all very much. So as Emily said, I am, or maybe she didn't say, I am her lawyer. And we've been fighting against EdTech for a lot of years now, and trying it on every front, trying to appeal to school administrators. Why are we doing this? Tell us more. Can we work together? Trying to appeal with regulators to enforce the laws that are on the books that only they can enforce. Trying to appeal to lawmakers at every level. But big tech is too enmeshed in our lawmaking system now. And so when I first started this, it was about 2018, back when Jean Twengie's first book came out about this, iGen, and my kids were 3 and 1 at the time. They are now 10 and 8. And in case you didn't know it coming into this, I assume you know now, this is an existential crisis, and we can't wait. I'm tired of waiting for somebody else to do something. So I started a law firm last year, the EdTech Law Centre, and I'm trying to enforce the laws that are on the books, because in the US, as it is everywhere, we have laws that protect our privacy, our property, our health and well-being, and that's what's at stake here. And so Emily was my very first client, and we are suing, as she said, PowerSchool on the basis of data privacy violations, that these companies come in, as is their business model, and they take our kids' private information and they sell it, they monetize it. And what do our kids get? A worse education than they've had in decades. And so our next round of lawsuits, in addition to these data privacy suits, which we've now sued Google, so this should be something that maybe we start hearing about. The next round of suits, though, are going to be product defect suits that say, Google, if you are going to sell a device into schools, it needs to be fit for that purpose. And as long as your business model is time on device and not time on task, how is it that kids will ever be able to use these things and be safe when they are simply a portal to the internet, a portal to all of those addictive technologies that we've talked about? And wondering for so long, why the hell aren't school administrators stepping up to do something about this? And realizing now, after having spoken with some more school administrators, they feel almost as trapped as we do, and say, we have pressure to get kids, 21st century skills, this is the future, all of those buzzwords, and yet these are the tools we have to work with. And so we do our best to try to keep them safe, but what can we do? And so I guess my long comment, a question that's more of a comment, but I'll parlay into a question, is kind of related to your comment, Hugh, which is, what, in your experience, do school administrators say about this, and when are they going to start demanding better products from the tech companies?
Yeah, great.
Do you have an answer to that?
I still don't know the answer. I've been asking, as I said in my talk, I've been asking, I'm so sorry, this is so much worse than reading and writing. Please tell me where it's coming from. And I get the same as Hugh. I get a strange, slightly corporate response, which seems to have been checked by lawyers, or some of my favorite journalist friends are here. I want a big forensic spotlight put on this, because there's something quite fishy going on, I think. It's a worse education, and as you say, it's damaging the children. So I don't know yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know much about it either, except that I've heard from some teachers that they're told by the district supervisors or whatever that they have to work the EdTech into everything they do. There's some sort of pressure. So I'm guessing that, as with in the pharmaceutical industry in America, they spend vast amounts of money bribing doctors to prescribe their drugs. It's horrible, but that's what happens. And I'm guessing that they have all kinds of bonuses for schools that get higher time on device. So the pressure is coming in. I can't prove that. I can't prove there's a monetary incentive, but it's weird, and so it needs some explanation. I just want to add.
I couldn't agree more with that. The question is it a cock-up or a conspiracy? Is it just that schools have fallen for tech in the way that we've fallen for tech? We can't even have taps in our bathroom now without some ridiculous bit of software. And we're all, transfixed, bedazzled by this nonsense. Or is it something more sinister, that there's some kind of financial or business incentive?
Who's the reporter from the Times? Where is she? So we need investigative journalists. Can you take this on? Can someone at the Times take this on? Because there's this weird pattern going on in both of our countries, and there might be a financial reason for it.
Can I just say, in state schools, it's not happening as much? Yeah. Because we can't afford it?
Yeah, so I hear. Yeah. But is it true that a lot of homework in state schools is set on just on your phone?
But in terms of screen time in lessons, we just can't afford that, so we don't
Right. Well, that's the answer then.
Get her microphone? Yeah, speak into the microphone.
So I am one of the journalists that Sophie's invited, and I have been trying to look into EdTech, and to the point that I've been talking to my kids' schools. I've got 9-year-old twins and a 5-year-old, and my 5-year-old's homework over this Easter vacation has been to do a number game on the computer. The 9-year-old twins' homework is to write a book review on the computer, and then upload it and wait to see what their friends' review of the review is with emojis. That's their reviews. And when I go to the school and I talk to the headmasters, and they just say, oh, well, this is the way it's done now. This is the platforms that we're using, and these are the platforms. So my plea for you, Jonathan, I mean, obviously we will continue to look into this as journalists, is I have gotten all these headmasters and the teachers to come to your talk on Thursday by just literally buying tickets for them. So can you please, your Intelligence Squared talk about the the big ed talk stuff, because they don't listen. They are just focused on us not letting our kids watch TikTok. We don't, but they go to these schools and they're all emojifying each other. It's insane.
Yeah. So I think what I'm going to so I need to put more ed tech. So I think Sophie and Emily actually know more about ed tech than I do. So I'm going to try to get more ed tech into my talk on Thursday when I'm speaking of the CST, the Schools Trust, whatever it's called. Yeah. But I just want to actually offer an answer to Hugh's question before, which might be relevant here. And you're saying, what do we do? Is it parents? How do we do this? And the view that I've developed over the last year running this campaign is that this is unlike any sort of social change campaign that we've ever seen. We normally think, like, if you want to get kids off smoking or you want to stop drunk driving, you need to communicate with people, you need to develop materials, you need to have a long mailing list, and you go and you try to persuade people, and it takes 5, 10, 15 years. That's the way we think about social change. This is unlike anything that's ever happened other than the fall of the Berlin Wall, because that was a time when there was this amazing thing that happened in Berlin, and then within 6 months, communism was gone. Mm-hmm. And the reason it was gone is because everybody hated communism, but they didn't have common knowledge. So common knowledge is a term. There's a new book coming out by Steve Pinker on common knowledge. In The Emperor's New Clothes, everyone knows that the emperor is naked, but they don't know that everybody else knows that the emperor is naked, nor do they know that everybody knows that everybody knows. So it's only once something reaches the state where we all know this and we know that everybody knows it, and then you can get massive change. And so my strategy with my movement has been, let's do that. Let's make this the fall of the Iron Curtain. And so the answer is everything. The answer is a sea of parents going to the school saying, get these things the hell out of my kid's face. It's going to your members of parliament and saying, really enforce or enact the age-appropriate design code, raise the age to 16. There's a bill in parliament to do that, as Australia did. So it's going to be especially parent-driven, and the exciting thing is that almost every decision maker is a parent. Governors, presidents, almost everybody has kids. And so it's if we can push on all fronts, and celebrities, the effect we've been able to have on Instagram. Instagram is a very powerful tool. But getting, Jessica Seinfeld was really helpful early in the movement, and getting her and some of her Hollywood friends, you create the sense that everyone knows and everyone is upset about this and everyone is acting. That makes it really easy for everyone to act.
Yeah, we should throw this open now. Yes.
Could I just add something else on the journalistic front? Just Camilla Tominey from The Telegraph. We're just not quite at that campaigning space yet. So if you look back in time, Telegraph campaigned to keep playing fields. The Telegraph campaigned to keep playing fields for children. Back in the day, 80s and 90s campaign. You then move into the COVID space. The Telegraph campaigns to keep schools open. The Telegraph have been campaigning on the issue of smartphones and keeping them out of school. I merely think that the journalistic world hasn't quite caught up with this unthinking and unquestioning acceptance of EdTech in schools. Certainly, Juliet and I can recommend to our investigations teams that we do look at what kind of incentivization is going on. Is there a war between Google Classroom and the Apple alternative, which seems to be the case? It strikes me that in my own children's schools, whoever gets the tech in first, and I even remember it from my own childhood, working on big, boxy Apple Mac computers. Is there some race to get into schools first, and then once you've got them on Google, you've got them on Google for life? We need to look into those sorts of issues. Just on a hopeful note for Dr. Haidt, all of those graphs sort of are tailing off in 22, 23. Is there any hope to be had for, say, my eldest two children who seem to be self-regulating themselves a lot more online now that we're having these conversations? They're 14 and 16. Do you think that there is a bit more hope that the Gen Zs might start seeing the light because the rest of us, the grown-ups, seem to be seeing the light?
Yes, it is a hopeful thing about Gen Z that they are not in denial. They see things clearly. They understand what's happening to them. And they say over and over again, we wish we could get off, but we can't because then we'll be alone. So it's a trap. And we just did a survey of Gen Z, and I can't remember the percentage, but the large majority say they are going to raise their kids without phones. They deeply regret what happened to them. They know that they've been harmed by it. And so they may make better choices. Now, knowledge is only a very weak guard against addiction. And these companies are extremely good at luring you in and addicting you. So that's why I don't want to get involved in like regulating this and that. Just put an age limit on. Just none of this. They should not be talking to strangers and having an algorithmic feed until they're 16.
Who's next? What about the lady here with the green jerkin? Has she got a mic?
I was just about to say.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. The gentleman with the mic.
Yeah. I'm a freelance journalist and a grandfather. And what you said about my 13-year-old and 15-year-old grandson is that they spend nearly all the time looking at a phone. But there is a saving grace, which I think schools could play a big part in. Basically, they also, one is a basketball fanatic, the other rides horses, and you can't ride a horse and look at an iPhone at the same time.
There's an app for that, though.
Nor can you actually play a game. And I mean, things like soccer and football are team things, and cricket and so on. So why can't you combine the attack on tech, which I think you're dead right, with actually the schools using their powers to encourage people to be more active and play?
My experience is that schools, particularly the kind of ridiculous posh schools to which too many of us send our children, actively discourage that. They're the ones that are saying, oh, they're not going to play outside today because it's raining, or they can't go on the climbing frame because it's windy. I mean, it's pathetic, and I think that it all goes back to the insurance industry and that, but that's a whole other campaign, a whole other set of furies in me. Who's the lady who was going to speak?
Hello, my name's Dora.
It's Dora. I didn't recognise you, Dora. Hello, Dora.
I work on a project to do with mental health, adolescent mental health with Oxford University, and it does a few things along these lines. But one of the things that we do is have a youth advisory group which help us, and they help advise how we provide lessons into schools on issues of mental health. And this is a suggestion and a question, is can we together encourage young people to join this fight? And I know you think they will be isolated, but actually I think quite a lot of people, especially kids that get into their 20s, realize that they can't hold down jobs, they can't attain their attention span, they do self-regulate, like the journalist was saying. And I think that if we make a real effort, that would be very powerful, because children listen to other kids. They don't really like being spoken down to, which is half the problem. I know with my own kids, I used to endlessly say, this is bad for you, this is that. And it's like, what do I know? That's right. I'm an adult. So I just think it's a suggestion, and can we do it?
Oh, absolutely, yes. In fact, so Freya, India, will you stand up, please? Freya? So Freya is a brilliant young British journalist, writer. She has a wonderful book coming out next year called Girls. She has a Substack called Girls. And she's been working with me at Anxious Generation. And she's part of our Gen Z team, which is there are a lot of Gen Z groups. But all these Gen Z groups seem to advocate for is let's make social media safer. And my fantasy is that we'll get a Gen Z organization, Gen Zers, who will activate, we call them high school students, around 16, 17-year-olds, to go back to their middle schools and say, just stay off, stick to the plan. So I think that you're right. The most powerful proponents of this is not old guys in their 60s. It's people. It's attractive, interesting, with it people in their early 20s who can say, look what happened to us. Don't make the same mistakes. That would be very, very powerful.
Who's got the mic? Well, maybe we should go to the back of the room now.
Hi. I have travelled down from Scotland and just seeing your little graph around what's going on in Scotland. I'm a counsellor and I've been working with young people for about 20 years. And it's wonderful to be sat in a room with parents who are promoting and fighting all this good fight for their children. I work with the hardest to reach kids, and I'm currently working with 3 schools just now where we're stopping the phones in school. And the biggest pushback is from parents, unfortunately. And it's just, I wrote a resilience program for parents to deliver to parents to help them, meet their children where they are and understand what they're experiencing and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what you can give me to take back to Scotland to help those parents that are really struggling to understand how it would be better for their young people.
Yeah. So first of all, it's probably the case that it's not most parents. It's the parents, that many parents are now so attached. Once we had the tracking technology, we could track our kids all the time. And of course, before then we couldn't, we just got used to it. And a minority of parents are so stuck on it, now that the watches have all kinds of biosensors, we have parents calling the school, why is my child's heart rate going up? What's going on in class? But here's the thing. The heads of school, the principals, they're all afraid of these parents, and that's why they didn't ban phones 10 years ago. But there's actually not that many of them. And what the experience in America is, and I've talked to dozens or really hundreds of school administrators and superintendents, is we expected a big pushback. We expected the parents to really fight this. And we found was, 3 or 4 did, but that ended after a week or two. So my point is, things are changing so fast, and politicians and school heads still often have their intuitions from 2 years ago. And they think, if I do this, there's going to be a huge parent pushback, and that might have been true 2 years ago. It's not true today. So I would tell them, have courage, just do it. The results are always great. And what school heads are finding all over the world is that the parents and the kids, the objections are not very big at first, and they go away within a few weeks because everyone sees, oh, this is so much better.
Who's next? Someone back there, yeah.
Hi, Isabel. So it's amazing that we've got this group of parents as a body to really start to try and campaign and make change. But, who we're fighting against is so enormous in terms of their scale, the power, the money that's involved. And so when I think this through, I wonder if, and we all are connected to people in business and in industry, and you touched upon it a little bit, Jonathan, when you alluded to your students and what you see. The way I see this playing out is we're going to end up in a situation where businesses find they are in a knowledge drought, a creativity drought, an innovation drought, and it's going to hit their bottom line. It's going to cost them so much to be able to hire the few who have been protected from this, because the problem is tech is pushing the message that, oh, be okay, because AI is going to plug that gap. I'm telling you it won't, because I'm working already and introducing some of that into the business I'm in, and it's not going to deliver on what everyone keeps on telling us it's going to deliver on. Maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now, but this problem is going to come before then. So if we can get that message into businesses, they can do some of that lobbying for us as well. And I don't know if others believe in that and would be willing to start to try and get that message across, because that could be quite powerful.
I think that's a great point. I teach in a business school, and so I'm often talking with people in the corporate world, and I always ask them, how are your Gen Z employees doing? Are you able to onboard them? Are they joining the culture? And almost uniformly, there's tremendous unhappiness, the fragility, the inability to take feedback. So there's very widespread sense in the business community that young people are just not very employable, and this is horrible. So I think we will. That's a good point. I hadn't really thought of activating like the business community. That's a very good idea. I think we would find a lot. So who, well, okay, yeah, that's a longer conversation, but thank you, I'll look into that.
Hi, I'm Molly. I'm a campaigner and freelance journalist, and I think most important, a parent for this conversation. And I guess my sort of observation, which will end in a question, is after 5 years of campaigning on sort of front line of child welfare, I completely agree with you, Hugh. I think campaigning, lobbying government is a waste of time. They won't do anything, and if they do, it will be the wrong thing. I think politicians, there's some amazing politicians, but they're far outnumbered by those who are in it for other political reasons. And I think schools is an interesting idea, but I think there is an urgency and a ubiquity to this issue. Like, we can't wait to do this school by school. And I guess my question, and it may well be one that everyone laughs at, but is there a chance here to do something truly radical and attention grabbing? Because we have to do something. I think, as Camilla Tominey said, I sense that particularly mainstream media is not quite there yet with this. So we're going to have to do something to move the dial if we're going to do it in time to save our own children. And just thinking about what the radical might look like, would there be room to organise something like a school strike? Like, those of us who have kids at posh private schools do have a huge advantage in that, we can act, and if we act together, we would at least kickstart this conversation in a way that perhaps then the business community, which I think is a fantastic idea, begins to take really seriously. So I guess that is my question, are we at the point where we can do something radical?
Well, that seems to me a wonderful idea. Just in my own experience, it hasn't been that easy to get enough parents at the little posh schools I send my children to on side yet. They're so proud and happy to have their kids there in the first place, and they're so worried about the fucking coffee mornings that they don't want to rock the boat. That's what I've found.
Same here. And I think something has died in the pioneering spirit of this country. I don't know why, but it's like, as I said when I put on the class WhatsApp group, what is going on here? No one wrote back on the group. Everyone sidled around and tried to find me at the gate or just texted me privately. There's a herd mentality at the moment. And some of it's fair enough in that people want to trust the schools and they want to trust our educational institutions. And I do too. And so does Hugh, so do we all. But we need a big reckoning. And Molly, I think that's a brilliant idea. It's just there aren't enough parents yet. I also think, sorry, are any of the health professionals for Safer Screens here? Because you guys are all the doctors and clinicians.
Right, if you speak up.
If you guys speak up, and I know you are already, that's incredibly powerful because it's not just annoying parents, it's doctors saying, it should be an NHS guidance saying screens are damaging children's brains. This is mass brain damage. And then, I think that could be another way in as well.
And then maybe a little lawsuit against a school or two, and they'll change their tune quite fast.
Yeah, I just want to add, don't give up on the Parliament doing something or the government doing something just yet. I just came from a meeting at Parliament. Biban Kidron, a member of the House of Lords, she's a force of nature. She's the driving force behind the Age-Appropriate Design Code, which was a major piece of legislation that the UK did. You can do great things. And at this meeting, I won't say who was there, but it was there were people on both sides, and there were people in the medical establishment. And we're not going to do anything in the U.S. Congress, that's guaranteed. But the UK Parliament has already acted, and I think it will act again. Don't give up. Keep up the pressure.
To be honest, Biban's a hero, and she's only in the House of Lords, and I don't think the government will do this because they, more than this, by far, they need a trade deal with the United States, and they won't get one if they upset the oligarchs. But I guess that's another issue. Yeah, Asif, you have about 700 schools, including this one. Is that right?
Hi everyone, I'm Atif. I founded and operate schools, as Hugh says, this one as well. 50 of them are mainstream, 15 are for children, what I call unique learning profiles, dyslexia, autism, ADHD. And so, look, really welcome the discussion and really enjoyed all of the data and can resonate with some of the stuff we see on the ground with some of the results that are coming out. The one thing I'll just put to bed pretty straightforward is absolutely, categorically, we get no kickbacks, incentives from any of the tech companies. They don't engage with us at all. So it's resellers who come to talk to our IT managers to sell this stuff. So to save the Telegraph's investigation team and all the resource here, there's a lot of things we can do for this really important topic, but that's probably not one that's going to lead down any form of any, certainly in the UK anyway. But what I would say is there's a lot I could say on this topic, and a lot my colleagues could say on this topic, but the extent you want to get school leaders together or school owners together to actually have a meaningful discussion, I'd happily volunteer, because there is an industry association and we all know each other like most industries do, and I'd happily convene voluntarily a discussion amongst the larger providers to have this, so you're talking to the horse's mouth and the operators, the owners of the largest groups in the UK.
Fantastic. I'd be very happy to do a Zoom call. If you can get a group together, I'll do a Zoom call.
Happily volunteer to that.
That was wonderful, because it seems to me that there's a space here for a hero school or set of schools to break the mold, to do this, to have amazing academic results, have the whole clientele of these kind of schools look towards those schools and think, well, that's the kind of school we want. And someone just has to have the courage to lead.
Major business opportunity.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Fawcett. My kid is in year 2 in a girls' school here. And I was wondering, I mean, we are all kind of fighting against this big tech and Snapchat, TikTok, etc. But let's go to the simplest thing. When I sent my child to a play date, and they have like all the kids having Snapchat, Instagram, using YouTube, I never showed my daughter YouTube or something. And she come back, said, Mommy, can we please do a TikTok video? Can we do this silly face? What can I say to my child? What would you say to a kid as a professional to say, okay, that's very nice, but we cannot use it because of what? Because it's silly faces, Roblox. I don't know what Roblox is, but she came back home and saying, I want to have the same. And this mom is a better mom than you. And I feel like then my mental illness is just going away.
Just tell them they'll turn into morons.
No, I tell her, I try to say everything. But then she goes to another play date, and I cannot isolate my child.
Yeah. That's where it's the class WhatsApp group, and you have to be really brave and make people really hate you.
I am brave because I'm leading this WhatsApp group.
Perfect. It will get better.
They evaporate because I try to explain, well, if possible, if we do a play date, let's play outside the sun, but let's discover worms in the whatever trees. But it's so difficult, but so many parents are like,
what you're describing is the collective action problem, that any parent who does the right thing is taking their kids away from the other kids, disconnecting them. We just put out a post on Snapchat on my Substack. Did you know that just based on their own, what the words they say, they get 10,000 reports of sextortion, not a year, a month. Snapchat is the #1 platform for men who want to get to children. All the evidence disappears. And kids are happy to share. So it is hard to say no, but my daughter says that her friends have sort of rallied to her, and when there's something important, they'll clue her in on it. More importantly, or more directly helpful to you, I should say, if you go to anxiousgeneration.com, click on Take Action, Advice for Parents, we have like a 5-page document, a parent's toolkit by Dr. Becky Kennedy. She is a very popular parent influencer in the United States, and she's really good on this issue of, as a parent, your job is to say no to when there's a safety issue, and it's the child's job to be upset about that, and then to learn how to deal with not always getting what she wants. And it's easy for me to say that. I'm the softie in our family. My wife is the one who's able to lay down the law, but Dr. Becky will really help you. She'll give you advice on exactly what to say.
Juliet, did you want to ask something? Arlene?
Juliet Sammer, The Times. On the EdTech front, I find it, one of the things I find most odd about it is that it's all the institutions that would normally be kicking up a huge fuss about privatization seem to be the ones that are very lethargic on this. Children's charities, teaching unions, large parts of the medical establishment. I've looked into it a bit. I haven't done a lot of investigating. I think there's some role played by these sort of pedagogical research centers at universities that kind of churn out research or policy on digitizing education, and then that kind of goes through the government in a very opaque way. But in terms of, I've also, tried to get this moving at my school. EdTech was an absolute no discussion, and the smartphone thing, there's a lot more sympathy. But I sort of detected there was a slight fault line between more of the Anglosphere parents were more sort of already clued up to this and interested, and the non-Anglosphere much less so, it wasn't on their radar. And I wondered what your theory is for why the Anglosphere seems to be particularly affected, or is this just a data bias?
Well, are you saying the non-Anglosphere, were they Europeans or were they non-Westerners?
Mostly Europeans. Yeah.
I was just in Paris and Amsterdam last week, and it seems to be the same everywhere. Now, in Northern Europe, they did not take away freedom. Their kids still go out. But as one Finnish journalist said to me, yeah, we let our kids out, but they're just walking around looking down at their phones. So the same thing is happening all around. It might be, this is changing so fast, and it might be because Jean Twenge and I have been writing in English, and the French world has nothing to do with the English-speaking world. We just don't know each other. So it might just be partly that it's moving very quickly in the English-speaking world, and they're just. My sense was that it's really moving. I had a meeting with Macron. The fact that he took a meeting with me on a day's notice because I met the speaker, or the head of the parliament, and he put in a call. And Macron took the meeting, and because he's been really good on this, he wants to act, and so. I think there is enormous sentiment. It's not universal among politicians, but you'd be surprised how many politicians, they're almost all parents, and that's what's happened in the U.S. It's especially female governors have been incredibly active on this. So yeah, don't give up on your political leaders. There is really more hope, I think, than you'd think.
Even at the price of, so Macron is, as you say, bold, and it seems the EU has been quite bold on this, and as a result, they're going to get 40% tariff slapped on that.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
If they dare to go ahead with that.
Well, so first of all, the most powerful company it's Elon Musk, and Elon Musk's Twitter's business model doesn't require kids. In fact, Linda Yaccarino, the head of X, Twitter, she was very supportive of our equivalent of our age-appropriate design code, COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, and Elon chimed in indirect support. So it's really three companies that own childhood and require children. They are TikTok, Meta, and Snap. Those three, I believe, are unreformable. They're destroying childhood, and they know it. But most of the tech industry is not committed to hurting children. And so I don't think, up on that stage, you had the head of Google. He would have no objection. I've met with Google. I think Google and Apple could turn out to be the good guys here. So
isn't Google behind a lot of EdTech?
They are. But I think, but it's maybe risky to say this, but I think Google started as an ethical company, whereas Meta did not, and Google still has some of that. And so while Google, they will push for whatever gets their products out, I don't think that Google is evil yet. I don't think that Google, I don't think Google is going to call in favors with Donald Trump to punish Britain if they do something. Elon Musk might, but I don't think he would mind getting rid of EdTech.
Okay.
He doesn't own that yet.
What about the lady on the end?
Thank you. Thanks very much. My name is Nedislava. We're meeting tomorrow. Hi. I recently published a book called Taming EdTech. I don't know if this works.
Taming EdTech?
Taming EdTech.
You did what? You wrote a paper, did you say?
A book called Taming EdTech.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the chapters is describing the big picture. So I follow a lot on the policies, especially American, UK, and EU, of what exactly they're envisioning. What's the big picture of digitizing education? And this is one of the big disconnects somehow. As you're saying at the moment, Google may not necessarily be the bad guy. And when you speak to EdTechs, when you speak to BigTechs, they all have this amazing vision. And that's the part where I think there's a problem. We need to sit down and discuss exactly how they envision the future. Because now, with their vision, which is through the prism of technologies, including things like the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. They're envisioning that data is going to allow us, data and AI is going to allow us to, solve these massive problems, one of them education. So the policies that are being integrated at the moment are, we're going to build these data pipelines, cradle to career, kind of utopian equilibrium to know exactly what education needs to produce so that it fits the market needs. So there's a deeply political issue there where politicians, governments, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, are really seeing that there is a big opportunity to digitize education in order to capture this data, because the promise is this utopian or equilibrium. So how do you envision the big picture? What do you think is the big picture? And when you say get kids off the devices, do you think that's ever possible? Is this a sort of step back? And also, how do you see targeting these policies and these big rosy pictures? Thanks.
So one thing that I've found is that when I talk with members of Gen Z and I ask, well, why don't you advocate for an age limit for just having and they can't conceive of a world in which kids aren't on these platforms. And it's kind of like if I were to ask you, would you rather that we live in a world with no time? Suppose time was never invented. Would you like that? Like what? You can't even imagine what that is. And in the same way, imagining a world where the kids are not on devices, we can't even imagine that. How could that ever happen? But if we start with the little kids, that's what I suggested today in the meeting. I suggested, phone-free schools, raise the age, but the other big thing is make this a public health campaign and start with the toddlers, because that's where the evidence is clear, is that there are massive disruptions in their development, language delays, potty training delays, behavioral problems. Start with the little kids and then get the norm that, and have like the nurses and everybody dealing with a new mother, make it clear, you don't expose kids to screens in the first 3 years. And once we start there, it will become more conceivable that, wait, maybe these things are bad for kids. And in a few years, especially if we can get the little kids off, and then, what do you call your first year's primary school? What do you call it? That when the kids are 5, 6, 7, 8, what school is that? Reception?
Apparently.
Okay. So then you can move on to that. And once you have that, now it'll be much more conceivable. So yes, to do it all at once is hard to imagine. I guess my group is trying to do it all at once because we're trying to see if we can make it seem like obviously necessary. But just start somewhere, and it'll become more conceivable.
Do we get thrown out at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Hello. Do we? Oh, so we better have just one more question then.
Wait, do we have anyone from Gen Z here? Wait,
well, we have Sunny.
Let's have Sunny from Gen Z.
Yeah. You want a mic?
That seemed quite bleak for my generation. I'm 22, and there was a lot of initiatives about what we do in primary schools and secondary schools, and I do see that happening. I've been in education for 8 years. But my generation, and the 2 years maybe below me, I feel quite lucky that I had COVID, because it maybe made me value going out and seeing my friends a lot. But the people around me are constantly on their phones, and I've just heard young people aren't as employable, they're getting stupider, and I believe that. But what do I do then, and what does my generation do? Because asking us to maybe go back into school seems like an initiative that's very positive. But what's our incentive to do that if the job market's drying up, we're not as employable, and social spaces are kind of eroding around us? Because in London especially, you have to pay for everything. There aren't as many parks, there aren't as many clubs. What's the incentive to change and escape that cheap dopamine?
Okay, this is a great way for us to end, because this is actually very optimistic. I can give you much more optimism now than I have so far, because I teach a course at NYU called Flourishing, and it's 35 19-year-olds for the most part. I also teach an MBA version of it, 28-year-olds roughly. And during the semester, they commit to making changes that will make them happier. We try to make them smarter, stronger, and more sociable. And the smarter is mostly removing the distractions, taming your digital habits. And the students who reduce their social media consumption from 4 or 5 hours a day down to less than 1, they get transformative results. They can focus, they can do their homework, they have time to be sociable, they go out with their friends. And so my point is, no matter what happened, you're still young enough. You can, any member of your generation who commits to taking back control of your attention, you're going to get amazing results, and you're going to be like a Superman among mortals. You will have very little competition in the job market. And here's another piece of advice. If you are hired, if you are interviewing, make it clear that you want to grow in this job. Say, I know some young people are very sensitive about feedback, but I want you to tell me everything I'm doing wrong. I want you to criticize me so that I can get stronger. Hardly anyone else will say that, and your millennial supervisors will be like, oh my God, yes, let's hire this guy. So for anyone who takes the initiative, you can turn this around, and you will be very desirable on the job market.
Well, I take my friend's phone during social situations now because he's on it so much.
Good. All right.
Okay, I think that's our time now. Mega thank you, dear Jonathan. That was spectacular.